Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show. Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM. As always, I'm here with Tanner Wayland. I'm Justin Lewis. We are your DMs for today's session of becoming a better Dungeon Master. And to get right into it, I want to ask Tanner a warm-up question. I would like you to pick a spell that your enemies... I would like you to pick a spell that an NPC is casting at your players. I want you to describe that spell without saying, I cast this spell.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's say that you are... Okay, I'm gonna say it like I would in the session. So...
You got it.
Okay, you see, step out from around the tree about 15 feet away. You see a wizard. He's got a haggard cloak. He raises his hand towards you. And it almost looks like he's just pointing. But then you notice kind of coalescing around his hand little sparks. And then they grow in from little puffs almost of electricity to writhing bands of electricity. And it shoots out. And for a moment before it hits you, you smell ozone. And then it passes through you. Okay, you just got hit by lightning. I'm going to roll this much damage. And that's kind of what I would do.
I specifically liked how you used the word writhing. Writhing bands of electricity. That was very descriptive. So well done.
Ah, gee whiz. You mean it? Just kidding.
I do.
Thank you. I like that too. I thought that was good. Perfect.
Well, Adventurer, thank you again for coming back to How to Be a Better DM. A couple announcements. First of all, we are doing our one-shot today on the day of this recording. Sorry. We're doing the one-shot today when the episode releases. So if you wanted to do the one-shot, you're probably a little bit too late. You're going to have to wait till next one-shot, which will be next quarter. And actually, that brings me to the next announcement, which is we are moving to a quarterly schedule for the one-shots. This is going to allow us to put more into the one-shots and hopefully create better scenarios. And actually, kind of the end goal is to eventually be able to publish these one-shots as fully produced content rather than just pieces of things that we've created. So if you want to sign up for that, make sure you go to the link in the show notes and we'll get you on the next one-shot. And if there's enough people, then we'll have to figure something out in order to get you more of those more often. Second announcement. It's more of a question, really. Would you, the adventurer, like some sort of Discord or community platform to engage with other listeners of the podcast, possibly find people to play games with or shoot ideas back and forth? Really just anything that can help you find people who think like you and actually help them help you to be a better DM. So if you're interested in an idea like that, go to Instagram and follow How to Be a Better DM, and then send us a message on whether or not you want that idea or not. Or you can just email howtobeabetterdm@gmail.com. In that email, make sure you also give us any feedback you have on the show, anything you like or dislike, or things that we can improve on, because we're always looking for ways to improve. And on that note, we're also considering making a YouTube channel as well. So really just let us know, what do you want?
Yeah, honestly, we really appreciate any advice. While we have a lot of opinions about what makes a great Dungeons and Dragons game, we're a little bit less certain about what kind of community interactions you guys want. So honestly, any help you can give us would be appreciated for your preferences. Sorry, Justin.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And actually, we should say a big thank you to all of you who have been a huge support. There are various names that come to mind that have just really done amazing stuff for us. And I just want to say thank you. You know who you are. Thank you so much for your support. We really can't do this without you, and we look forward to any opportunity we can have to interact with you more often and hopefully bring you into the limelight as you have allowed us to step into the limelight. Well, with that, I think those are all the announcements. Let's get to the main topic of today's show. We've all been in groups where things are just going great, you're vibing, the flow is really great, and then there's that one player that just seems to ruin it all in the right moments. I don't know how they do it, but they're just terrible. Yes, today we are talking about annoying D&D players, and really, more importantly, how to deal with them. So Tanner, would you like to go first, or do you want me to go first?
How about you kick this out?
You got it. One of the most annoying players that I have dealt with, and actually this is one that I fall into the category of more often than not, is the player DM. Again, this is me when I play. I try very hard not to be this player. But essentially, this is a DM who is playing as a player who is very good as a DM. So good that they can't not be a DM while they're playing. Sometimes this means they're a rules lawyer. Other times this means that they just happen to narrate things that aren't really theirs to narrate. Sometimes when a player does something, they'll jump in and say, oh, and then you do this and that and this. Or they just really kind of steal the show a little bit from not necessarily the other players, but from the dungeon master. The nice thing about this player, though, is that because they are a dungeon master, they are very aware of the struggles of dungeon masters. So it's not very hard to sit them down and say, hey, I know you're a dungeon master. You're awesome. But this is me being a dungeon master. So if you could, I'd like you to help me rather than me help you be the dungeon master. And generally, they'll understand because, again, they've been a dungeon master. And if they're playing, they're trying to show up as a player. They're trying to exercise other muscles. So I would also maybe say to them, you're really good at being a dungeon master. I've noticed maybe you could try and focus on this aspect of play, and maybe you can help those around the table do that same thing. I find that would be very helpful in getting them to understand your situation and really help them to help you as the dungeon master.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think enlisting their help, because here's the great news. If you have someone who has been a DM in your campaign, they're probably interested in playing with you, right? There are a few exceptions where it's like, oh, they're just doing you a favor because you're new. But if it's like, no, you guys have been friends for a while, you are, it's your turn to DM or whatever, then I think that they are adult enough and they understand the interactions between DM and players enough that you can be like, hey, I noticed, well, first off, a great thing is like after a session, a great way to talk about any issues you have is first go up to them, be like, hey, thanks for playing. What do you think I could have done better? And then after that, after you get their advice, then be like, hey, I kind of struggle with this because it felt like when you were suggesting all these things, it kind of broke the flow of my my thoughts. I think I'd appreciate if you mentioned it after the session or whatever you say. But the point is you can be more direct, and I think that's not going to hurt your relationship at all, so long as you aren't being a jerk about it, right?
Key phrase: don't be a jerk, right?
Yeah, that's.
What about you, Tanner?
Yeah. So for me, I think one that's pretty popular, a pretty common annoying person, and just to qualify it, like for me, I don't think of annoying players as these things to get rid of, because chances are that they just don't realize how annoying they're being, right? Or they just don't realize how their actions are causing issues. And so if you're just honest with them, or if you teach them through different things, it's not always through honesty. Sometimes it's, incentivizing certain types of play, then I think you can really get past this. And a classic example is the protagonist, right? That's kind of what I call this kind of annoying player who, their first character in D&D, probably a paladin, right? Just that perfect mixture of righteous and also Superman, and they're just like, oh, I am the hero. Everybody else might be joking or fooling around. My character's serious, and he can't take a joke, and like just kind of derails things just following their supposed higher call. And they won't even back it up. They'll just be like, no, that's wrong. In many ways, it comes across as, as one-dimensional. It comes across as controlling, because they really make it so that other players can't essentially be their own person, without them kind of being the morality police, or just being like, oh, whatever they're doing is just a joke. Follow me on my side quest where I solve my family's murder, that, much more important than anybody else's. For someone like that, what I really would focus on is team play, kind of similar to the DM, where you kind of enlist their help, but you're enlisting in a different way. You kind of, after the session or in between sessions, via text, email, call, whatever, you talk with them, see how they're liking the campaign, and then also be genuine with them and be like, hey, I've noticed this player seems a little out of it. I've been really wanting to get onto their side quest or their backstory, like kind of connection, and kind of asking them for help and being like, I know that your guy is pretty focused. Would he be the kind of person who would let that happen? And then if you ask outside of the session, you essentially give them, carte blanche to be like, oh yeah, my character would totally do that, by bringing it up ahead of time. And even in character creation, I think if you ever run into someone who it's like, oh, in your session 0, you realize that they're just kind of creating a hero stereotype, then you could be like, hey, how does your character play well with people? Does he care about helping his friends achieve their goals, or is he kind of more controlling? Because if you phrase it like that, then of course they're not going to be like, oh yeah, my character's more controlling, because they come off as a jerk. So if you bring it up in a place where the character is still malleable, which is like in a session 0 or between sessions, you can kind of cut that off. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I think using the session 0 or character creation to ask some of those questions is really valuable, primarily because it does help them kind of get into the mindset of their character. Another thing that I think you can try is asking them why. And you can even do this in the voice of an NPC who's with them. Why are you going to solve your sister's murder? Like, why does that matter to you?
Yeah.
Oh, because she's my sister. Okay, but so do you love her? Oh, yeah, I love her. So why do you love, kind of, and ask some of those questions and try and delve a little bit deeper, either in game or out of game.
Yeah, exactly.
The next one that I hate is the distraction. I seriously hate these. These are the players that enjoy the game a lot, but they also seem to have ADD or ADHD a little bit, and they get distracted and either end up sharing videos with other players during the game and or having side conversations. Super annoying. Obviously, that's a very specific example, but I think the best thing to do with these players is to, at the beginning of your campaign, you need to set rules at the table and have everyone agree to and follow the rules and say, hey guys, I want to create a campaign for you, and I want it to be the best I can. So I want to set some rules up, and these rules are designed to help all of us really have the best gameplay possible. What sort of things would you guys suggest? And if they don't say, hey, well, no videos at the table or no distractions at the table, then maybe you can suggest it. If that doesn't work, I would say you're probably going to have a side conversation with this character and say, or with this person and say, hey, I've noticed you've been doing this. It's kind of distracting. It's really hard to dungeon master and create an immersive experience for everyone when you're having side conversations. And if you could, just kind of help me out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one thing that could help a lot, along with that kind of directness with them, is maybe you give them a task, because I think that when you are more distracted, it typically means that, like, hey, they're not getting as much out of the game. And that could happen because, like, oh, another player's having a lot of role playing, or the combat's just kind of slow. Each of those has, like, a solution, right? There are ways, and you can look it up, and we'll honestly probably have a conversation about this in the future. Ways to speed up your combat so that every player is not getting distracted. Ways to make your role-playing punchy and to the point, or involved enough that, like, hey, people aren't going to get distracted. Or some people have different tasks, right? Some people are in charge of, like, taking essentially notes, or like keeping a log of treasure and stuff like that. Whatever it is, you just want to keep in mind that aside from being direct with them and being like, hey, these are some issues, and also setting up rules beforehand, if you're just noticing that player is distracted, take this as an opportunity to try and up your game,
Agreed. I really like the idea of giving them tasks. I think that's a very powerful way. And back to what you said, sometimes this might just be a sign to you that things are boring. So maybe you might go up to them and say, hey, I've noticed that you get kind of bored a little bit. What sort of things do you think might make you more interested or keep your attention longer? And that might just be something a discussion you have to have with the entire table if you notice that, one person is being distracted enough to be able to distract another person. Maybe it's just not gripping enough.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, is it okay if I share one?
Oh, of course.
Perfect, great. So the other one that I thought of who has given me issues in the past I call them the tryhard. It's essentially people who, deep down, the main thing they don't want to do is they don't want to be on their back foot. They don't want to lose. Whether that's, most often it shows itself in combats, right? Like, for example, they're rule lawyers when it benefits them, when it's like, oh, no, I can totally do this. Look at the rules. And then they're very lax with certain rules that specifically don't benefit them, like certain save throws, things like that. You can tell that they just hate the idea of losing and their character, like getting hurt, poisoned, like having a detrimental thing happen to them. For me, I've seen a few people like this, and I'm like, man, this is supposed to be a fun game. Take it seriously enough that you're not distracted, but on the other hand, don't take it so seriously that you can't have fun and you can't, let anything bad happen to your character, because we can always make a new one. Or your character can have, this is actually one way that I'd suggest kind of dealing with this kind of player. I think aside from keeping them accountable for the rules, I would say that treat failure and make failure for them into something that isn't so just terrifying. For example, a lot of times people, and I have an issue with this in my own life too, I worry about failure until, like, I actually visualize it. I'm like, you know what, failing on this isn't actually that hard, whether it's like a hobby or a project I'm doing. And then that makes me more willing to try riskier or unfamiliar things. Do the same here. When they do fail rolls, have different outcomes rather than just straight failure. It's like, oh no, you failed and your arm got chopped off. Oh no. Don't do anything like that.
Right.
That's just, you can do that occasionally for, like, more serious dramatic moments, but just teach them through experience that, like, hey, sometimes failure can be humorous or funny, or it can just, you just have to react different, you know? I think that that's a great way to kind of wean them off of being a tryhard.
I agree completely, and I think it's even one thing you might consider is maybe they're in the wrong class in combat, especially if, if they're feeling like they're not doing enough. Like maybe they're a warlock who only gets to hit once, but they'd rather be a monk who can hit like 15 times. Another thing you can try is like roles that don't really matter, just to kind of give them exposure therapy a little bit to failing. So in a group I've played with before, they did like daily handsomeness or beautiful rolls to see how good looking their character is, and there's all sorts of ridiculousness that can go along with that. I think just helping them get used to the idea that, yeah, you're going to roll ones. It's fine because you also roll 20s. The next one that I would say is annoying is called the Waffler. And these are the players that say, I walk through the door, and then you say, right as I do, and then they say, I don't walk through the door, and I do something else. And they kind of try and take back what they said they do, or, they roll something, and then they're like, oh, no, I don't do anything. And you're like, well, what did you roll? And they're like, well, I rolled a 1. And you're like, well, okay, you did terrible. Here's this negative effect. It's kind of similar to the tryhards a little bit, but actually it sounds very similar now that I think about it. But I think with this player, you also kind of have to be firm. Like you said you walk through the door, so you do. And if they argue, you might need to have another conversation with them outside of normal playing hours. This would be a good place to remind them, you know what, you're playing for yourself, but you're also playing as your character. You're thinking about what your character would do with the knowledge that they have. So would they walk through the door? Yes. Would they walk through the door stealthily? Well, you didn't say that, so you didn't. Even if, and it's kind of this fine balancing act between what the character would do, or what the player would do, and what the character remembers. Sorry, reverse that. What the character would do and what the player remembers. But again, it just takes kind of some firmness and be like, look, you walk through, you're not going to die immediately because I'm not a terrible DM who hates you. But there's going to be some negative consequences because you didn't think completely through,
Yeah, and in a way, I don't know. Sometimes it's frustrating as a DM when a player is constantly, like, when they mess up so many times that they're just constantly cautious about everything. Because, yeah, when you're in a dungeon, you're cautious. But it kind of sucks if there's, like, a stealth check or a perception or whatever kind of check, like, every 5 seconds, And so I would say that there's a few practical ways for people, for DMs to get around this. One is when you're doing if it's a player one-on-one, or like if the player is doing something and no one else is doing anything and that, that's pretty simple. It's like, okay, you're going to walk through the door? Cool, so you're walking through the door. And then, like, because they're kind of have stated it, that's cool. I think that a lot of the issues arise when it's a group and they're each supposed to do one thing, and so you ask and it's not entirely certain, like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, but I'll wait for the other guy. Instead, get what everybody is doing and be like, okay, Timmy, what are you doing? Jimmy, how about you? Al, and just getting everything and be like, okay, so this is what everyone's doing. And then they don't have a chance to waffle because they've already said it and it's locked in, just like essentially making a practice of whenever you enter into a new room or scenario or whatever. Don't just ask one player what they do. Ask every player, get it all, and then kind of act it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And another example is in combat, if you use minis or like a visual representation of combat, sometimes as you put down the adversary and you ask them to place themselves, they kind of place themselves in very advantageous places, and that they would not be in those places because they just wouldn't be. Like they said they were walking in a straight line or something. So one thing I like to do is I like to ask them where they would be standing like you just said, ask them their individual responses and then place the enemies if they don't already see the enemy and so forth.
Great idea.
It's kind of a specific, one. But one thing I would like to point out is that most of these annoying player tropes can really be prevented by establishing specific rules of the relationship before you start playing. Like at the beginning of the campaign, and really have everyone's buy-in. And I find that the best way to do that is to ask them for suggestions and then slightly prod them in certain directions. And then after that, I think having individual conversations with the individuals in question and then pointing back to the rules that everyone said they'd live by really helps to improve the situation.
Yeah, and honestly, if it's a real issue and it really annoys you, because I'll be honest, I think some DMs are naturals at resolving conflicts with players and resolving issues just with their mannerisms and how they communicate. Others not so much. And so with those rules, and that's not negative, we all have our different strengths, but with those rules that you set up in session 0 or whatever you want to call it, I would strongly recommend, if you're worried about people forgetting these rules, why not print them out? Do a little bit of homemade problem making, actually have the rules written down in a fancy font, make multiple copies, and then laminate it, whatever you want, right? Make it big, make it pretty, and then give it one to each player and be like, okay, remember, these are the rules, and there's no shame with that, right? And just explain the reasons. And I think most players would agree that it's hey, we want this game to move fast, to be respectful, to be fun, right?
I love that. Very simple and very easy. So thank you, Adventure, for joining us in the tavern today, talking about common annoying D&D players and how to deal with them. Like I said, make sure you guys sign up for our next one-shot. And also, we don't ask this enough, really, but make sure you follow the podcast wherever podcasts are listened to, mostly on Spotify. But if you're on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or anywhere else, really, give us a follow and a rating and review. And who knows, maybe if we get enough followers, we can do some sort of giveaway on our Instagram. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But Tanner, any final words for our adventurers?
I mean, we love you. We care for you. We hope that you're having a great summer. That's it.
Amen. And with that, guys, until next time, let's go ahead and roll initiative. Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.Rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. monsters.rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action.
You one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
Drama.
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
And Stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, We'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.